Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Chatham Finance Committee's rare morning March 8 meeting. We appreciate you being able to join us today. Pursuant to Governor Baker's July 16, 2022 signing of an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, including the extension of his March 12 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, this meeting of the Chatham Finance Committee is being conducted in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 508-945-4410 and enter conference ID 370-403-592 #. 508-945-4410, 370-403-592 #. Or one may join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. Despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access, and we will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. In accordance with town policy, the public can speak to any issue, business item on the agenda during the meeting when recognized by me as chair. We are going to continue to roll through the various capital articles. Today we're going to be hitting generally large capital expenditure articles, 4 of those, I think. And we are going to have a conversation about a report to the warrant, which is forthcoming. So with that, I'm going to do a roll call. Norma Avalar. Here. Kristen Andres.
Here.
Tommy Doan.
Here.
Barbara Madison.
Here.
Barbara is there. John Papalardo.
Here.
Tracy Shields. Joanne Sprague.
Here.
Andy Young.
Here.
The chair is present. We have a quorum. So with that,
Mr. Chairman, may I interrupt for one moment?
course.
Before we start voting on all of these very important, expensive articles, I would like to check with Alex to see what the projected tax rate was when we were doing the operating budget and what the projected tax rate for FY24 would be if we voted approval on all of these articles.
and we'll have a presentation on each of the various bits that we're going to be voting on.
Thank you.
From Alex. And I see too that John Papalardo has joined us, so I am going to uncross his name. Good. Okay, so Alex, I think we're going to start with the water treatment facility at the training field wells.
Yes, thank you. Just as background, the Select Board did discuss this on their meeting of February 28th, and I did include some of those, the presentation. Actually, there wasn't a presentation on this, but I did include the agenda report for that. And this is for the treatment plant for both iron, manganese, as well as PFAS treatment at the training field wells numbers 5 and 8. The total amount of this article is $19,800,000. So again, that's a large dollar amount, but this is for water treatment to get the water treated, as I said, for all 3 of those contaminants. Currently, our financial advisors are recommending using a 4.5% interest rate for general obligation bonds. However, this will be eligible for 2% loans through the Clean Water Trust and potentially for 0% loans. We're waiting to hear if there's mitigation for the PFAS portion of this. So there has been talk that there might be 0% loans for PFAS treatment. So we're hopeful that that's coming in. However, being conservative when we're going out, not knowing what's going to happen, I've calculated debt service using the 4.5 interest rate for a 20-year debt issuance and 5% for 30 years. I've looked at both of those. Again, we don't usually recommend going out for 30 years just because of the amount of interest that you pay. It's like a $5 million more in interest over those years. So we'll be looking at 20-year loan. And looking at the water debt as we move out, that's on page 2 of the agenda report to the Select Board. We do have debt drop-off in the water department because, again, this is paid for by water rates, not on the tax rate for any of the water debt. So we should be able to fill in that debt without increasing water rates to the ratepayers. looking at the receipts that have come in over the past few years, although last year was down a little bit with the conservation measures, I think we have enough water revenue to support the addition of this debt coming on in FY '20, probably '26 at the earliest.
Okay, thank you. Questions for Alex, please? Alex, could you possibly speak to Joanne's question about what the cost, I guess, on the tax rate? You're suggesting no impact on the tax rate?
Not for this article, so I will address that when we talk about the improvements to the Eldridge Public Library, as well as when the debt will hit for the other projects.
Okay, thank you. Could you just run through the process of the state revolving fund and kind of what our role and when do we find out if we get 0 or 2 or otherwise?
Yeah, the state revolving fund, or the Clean Water Trust, is funds that are available through the state. And for wastewater, they're available at 0% interest loans for qualified expenses. And for water, it's usually at 2% interest loans for any of those qualified expenses. Oftentimes, it doesn't include design and engineering costs, but again, that would be under a general obligation bond at a 4.5% interest rate, most likely. But the bulk of this is all for the construction. The design and engineering has already been accomplished through another article. So again, what happens is that we apply for the intended use program. We actually submit a project PEF, a project engineer. I can't remember what a PEF stands for, but it's a project intention, and so we apply for that first. Then we get on the intended use program. If we're approved on that, we have to have the local authorization in order to continue, or else we have to put it off for another year.
Okay.
And we've done that with the wastewater and water previously, and it's saved the town, a lot of money in interest costs.
Yeah, it's a very, very successful program for us. Okay. Joanne, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alex, is Chatham still eligible for the rural area Department of Agriculture grants because we're still considered a rural town?
We are still considered rural. However, the last time we went out for those grants, those were at 2.75%. So I think the Clean Water Trust at 2% is probably the better option as far as the interest rates.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, further questions? Norma, please.
Alex, we keep paying down water debt, and yet it always seems so high. Where am I losing something?
Well, water debt right now for FY 2024 is just over $1 million, and it was higher a number of years ago. So it fluctuates as we added the water treatment plant out at the wells off of Morton Road. That's already been financed, so that's included in this debt service. So again, because this is paid for by the water department, again, it's looking at the water rates, and we projected this out a number of years ago that we could have the water rates sufficient to fund these capital projects moving forward. And I don't know if that answers your question.
And why can't we do that now?
Well, again, because we can't really borrow until the project is underway and probably a little bit complete. We run into arbitrage problems or issues if we borrow now and the project's not complete within 2 years. So we have to make sure that the project is substantially complete when we go to borrow.
And do you see this as the last time we will have to do this for this particular circuit?
Well, for wells 5 and 8, I would think that this would be the treatment plant is a new treatment plant. I know the select board is very concerned, and I think this committee is also, with both the quality of the water and the quantity of the water in town. Right now, we're not looking at any more, and I know there was a discussion at the select board meeting on whether we needed to review to see if there was any more potential well sites, which there was a report back in 1985 or something where they did not recommend or reviewed all the potential well sites, and wells 5 and 8, as well as the wells in the town forest, were those sites that they had looked at.
I see Barbara's got her hand up, and then I'll go to you, Tommy. Barbara, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh,
Alex, is there any
hold on a minute, Barbara, we
danger?
can't
Mark,
hear
we
you.
can't hear Barbara.
I'm not muted.
I think oh,
Barbara, try again.
How, can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. It's like a Verizon ad.
Alex, my question is there any danger that that interest rate could go up? I mean, do we have a reasonable amount of security that we will be able to get 2% 3 years from now, regardless of what interest rates and inflation might be doing to everybody else's interest rates?
yeah, the Clean Water Trust is at 2% and has been for a number of years. I don't see them changing that. Again, the wastewater or sewer issues are at 0%, and this is, again, because drinking water and, protection of the groundwater is public health, and the Clean Water Trust is, that's why we get the subsidies on these loans, so that's why they're so low interest rate. So I do not foresee it going up.
Thanks.
Tommy, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alex, I know that they're doing something for the quality of the water, but are they doing anything to get more quantity of the water?
Well, that's what we looked at for wells, if there was additional sources of wells. I think one of the studies, the $50,000 that's coming from water surplus for FY 2024, which is being proposed, is looking at what treatment might be needed for wells 1, 2, and 3, which are in South Chatham.
Thank you.
Well, and we're in the process too, aren't we, of finishing 10 and 11 up at Mill Pond in the town forest?
Yes, yeah. So again, the treatment plants are really helping to get clean water and hope, again, having those wells not shut down due to some sort of contamination will help as well.
Norma, please.
This is a relatively important question. The PFAS,
Yep.
will that be
You need
included?
to turn on. There you go.
Will the treatment of PFAS, thanks, Ray, be included in part of this article?
Yes, yes.
And
This
that
is
will be for the increase or for the entire amount that we're using?
The PFAS treatment will be part of this water treatment plant. So currently, we have a temporary treatment for PFAS at this treatment, at wells 5 and 8. Those 2 vessels will be repurposed into the permanent treatment plant. However, it will also treat iron and manganese, which must be treated first before you remove the PFAS. So it will treat all 3 of those, and the PFAS 6, so all the PFAS contamination, as well as iron and manganese.
Joanne, please.
Mr. Chair, thank you. If I had to choose, and we found out after going through all this that we were limited in the number of projects, I would choose this instead of, at the top of my priority list, and drop others if I had to. I think it's so important. We're just beginning to learn about PFAS and where it is and where it crops up and how dangerous it is. So I think the town is wise to continue the PFAS treatment, the development of the new wells, and anything we can do to increase our supply and the purity of our water. So I think this is really important, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think it's also important to note that, as the PFAS is becoming more of a nationwide issue, there might be some more federal funds that might be available for grants. And of course, the town will look for those, so, to offset any borrowing. And we have the article crafted to accept any grants, should that be the case.
Okay, Andy, please.
Just, apropos, the other end of the pipe is coming up in a minute or two here, I assume. We need to take care of that, too.
The other end of which pipe?
Depending on how you view it.
Oh, okay. I'm with you. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute, I guess. All right, well, with that as background, any further questions? If not, I'll take a motion to support the proposed article relative to spending $19.8 million for PFAS treatment, iron and manganese as well, for wells 5 and 8.
So moved.
Second.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to roll call vote. Norma?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Tommy?
Yes.
Barb?
Yes.
John Papalaro? John?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, 8-0.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, transfer station project, Alex, please.
Yes, next on the agenda is the transfer station improvements. We've had this on the capital list for a number of years. I think you've heard some of this before. It's basically 3 different phases. So we have Phase 1, which is the redeveloped residential drop-off area. Preliminary cost estimates are $2.2 to $2.7 million. We have the new garage staff building area at $2.1 million. And then Phase 3 are the transfer station building modifications. And we don't have an amount on that right now because the design and engineering has not been completed for that. We have done the design and engineering for Phase 1 and Phase 2. Currently, Phase 1 is about 85% complete, and Phase 2 is 50% complete. So again, Phase 1 and Phase 2 address safety concerns as well as some of the OSHA compliance issues, and the Select Board have identified those as a priority, as well as the consultants. According to the consultants, these phases will take between 3 and 6 months to complete, and a potential bid could be ready for late summer, early fall, with construction in fall of 2023 or summer of 2024, meaning that we most likely would not go out to borrow until sometime in 2024, with debt service hitting in 2025, most likely. This can be phased in. The Select Board have recommended both phases for the town meeting. However, we would not have to complete both phases. I think the priority of the Select Board is for the new garage staff building first, and then, so probably Phase 2 would be the first phase to be completed, and then Phase 1. What we would do then would look at, borrowing for Phase 2 before borrowing for Phase 1. So sort of reversing those. So again, to lessen the debt service, so it wouldn't impact the taxpayer all at once in 1 year. Although if interest rates are favorable, we might go ahead and borrow it all at one time. We'd have to look at that at the time. And again, interest rates for this are recommended at 4.5% for a 20-year issuance. And if we were to borrow it all at once, it would be about 5 cents to the tax rate, and about 5 cents to the tax rate, or $54.16 for a single-family home valued at $1 million for the first year.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. Say that again, Alex. Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, and you're saying if we borrow for all 3 of them at once, that brings the tax rate up to 3.93?
If we were to borrow at once, it would be a 5 cent, and again, this is just for phases 1 and 2.
1 and
Phase 3
2.
is not part of this.
Okay.
And it looks like it would be an increase of 5 cents to the tax rate.
Yep.
And for a single-family home valued at $1 million, the impact for the first year, based on our current valuation, would be just over $54. And that's if we were to borrow all of it at one time. The 4.8.
Say that last sentence again?
If we were to borrow $4.8 million all at one time, that would be the 5 cent increase, or just over $54 for the first year of debt service. And that was based at a 15-year loan. Again, trying to reduce the amount of interest that the town ultimately pays. We could look to put that out for 20 years, which would then reduce that even, the impact even further. Again, not knowing how many were coming out, how many capital articles were coming out at the time, trying to be the most conservative. Borrowing is a great tool that we have, but I just personally, and I think professionally, don't want to incur extra interest if we don't have to. So usually we go out for 20 years at the maximum. If we can program something in at 15 years for a smaller debt issuance, we'll look at that.
Joanne, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just so I'm clear and just so the taxpayers are clear, if we accept this article, then that means we're borrowing enough for the first two phases? Or all three phases?
We would be authorizing borrowing for the first two phases. Whether we borrow that all at once or whether we split that up remains to be seen. Again, I think Phase 2 for the $2.1 million is the priority or the most urgent priority. And then Phase 1 for the residential drop-off area was the second priority for the Select Board. However, they did authorize the full amount of the $4.8 million for town meeting to put before town meeting. And again, that's why we looked at the impact of 5 cents if we were to borrow that full 4.8 for 15 years at a interest rate of 4.5% right now. Again, current interest rates are about 3.75. However, our financial advisors recommended using the 4.5% just to be on the safe side.
So the residents, when saying that's exactly what we do, when would they expect the $54 increase on their tax bill?
If this gets approved at town meeting and we start, again, looking at completion, fall 2023 to summer of 2024, if we go out and issue bonds in fiscal year 2024 next year, it would not hit the tax rate until FY 2025.
Yeah, I think it would be really, really important for us to make sure the taxpayer knows when that would hit and how much. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Most welcome. I wonder if we shouldn't rename the phases. Might be a little easier. Norma, please.
I'm very ignorant of all of this. Ben Nicholson picks up my rubbish, so I have no idea. But why do we have to redevelop a residential drop-off area? Number one. Number two, why do we need a new garage-style building? And what building modifications are we talking about?
Okay, let me just go to, I do have the, I included the presentation to the Finance Committee. However, I don't think you received that, so I'm going to look for that right now. And see if I can share my screen here. Oh, wrong one. So again, the residential drop-off is very confusing, I guess, towards people. I don't use the Chatham, I'm not a Chatham resident, so I don't use the transfer station. I have been down there. But I think the idea is to get the flow better so people don't get stacked up at the drop-off, and it reduces the risk of any incidents down there. Traffic flow is, get people in and out and do that. So I think some of the items that came, let's see, transfer station presentation. All right, I'm going to share my screen, if I might. Okay, and, all right. So the transfer station project update, and I'll just go through some of this. So again, the residential drop-off area to create a safer, more user and more efficient facility, separate residential traffic from the commercial and operational traffic, and then address some of the operational challenges. So they need to revisit any changes in site conditions, as well as operational challenges, and the overall layout, as well as the estimated tonnages coming through there.
And I think, Alex, so I can just jump in. My recollection from the initial presentation of this a couple of years ago was that one of their concerns, such as it is kind of the cross-traffic. So you've got the commercial coming into the scale on the right-hand side, you've got the residential coming in the left-hand side, and then residential goes and cuts across the commercial lane. And there was some concern about kind of deconflicting that crossover and keeping the residential all on one side of the facility, keeping the commercial all on the other side of the facility.
Mr. Chair,
Joanne, please.
I have been using this transfer station since 2005, when I first came here. This would be very far down the list when I'm looking at borrowing and tax increases compared to water and sewer. it's there, and it is a transfer station, and it's where we go to dump our garbage and leave our recycling items. It would be nice, I guess, to have it improved. I have never noticed a problem with the traffic flow or being able to open my trunk and put the garbage in the dump. So if we're, again, having to prioritize, which I think we always should, this would be secondary to a lot of other issues facing the town, in my estimation.
Well, I think that the counter argument, if the selectmen were replying to this, I think the concern is that phase two, which should be phase one, which is the workspace for the workers, a locker room, break room, shower facilities, are wholly inadequate, and I think OSHA's made some complaints about it. Is that correct, Alex?
That's correct, and I've just pulled up Phase 2, which is the safety improvements for the staff and the new garage staff building. Again, concerns with the existing staff facilities. There's odor issues, bathroom access, OSHA compliance. I mean, currently, some of the staff have to go into their vehicles to get warm because the building is just not sufficient. So the existing garage building is, beyond its useful life. So again, they have prepared a conceptual level floor plan. They're at 50% design level. And then, again, we consider this to be a high priority for staff safety, as well as, just the well-being of staff down there. OSHA has put us on notice for several issues. So this is the highest priority of the select board, although they did identify both this staff building new garage as well as the drop-off area to put forward. So again, just some of the plans. I think most of you have seen these. But again, this is the high priority of the board to have this area for staff and take care of some of those OSHA issues.
Kristen, please.
I just want to kind of give my personal testimony of what poor condition these employee quarters are, or spaces. It's been many years since I've been there, when I used to participate in recycling events, and it was nasty at that point, so I can't imagine half a dozen or more years later, the condition, not having anything done there to improve it. Nobody would want to work there under the current conditions, and nobody'd want their children to work there, or it is pretty deplorable. So I am wholly in favor of improving working conditions there. These guys work really hard, and they should have a decent place to take a break or use a restroom. Thanks.
Thank you, Kristen. Joanne, another question?
No, thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
I'm sorry, Norma, please.
Okay. But I think this is a lot of money that's being asked for that is unnecessary. Now, perhaps the staff building, it seems as though it is necessary because a lot of improvements need to be made. But redeveloped residential drop-off area, come on. Our chairman mentioned traffic flow. Traffic flow, if you can manage that roundabout on 28 and George Ryder, you could certainly manage the dump. And I think this is too much money spent for too many things.
Thank you, Norma. Just checking to see if Barb or John online or on the phone have any questions. I don't see any raised hands. I'm not sure what that is, but it's 36 degrees outside apparently.
I don't think that's me,
Oh, okay. Thank you,
but
Alex.
I'll stop sharing my screen.
News flash. Okay,
Oh,
Joanne, please.
John does have his hand up.
Oh, John, please.
Yeah, just a quick question. Do you have to do phase one to get to phase two, or can you just build a new building for the employees?
No, we can do Phase 2 first. So as the chair was mentioning, maybe flip those. So call Phase 2 Phase A and call Phase 1 Phase B. But yeah, we could do the staff improvements first.
But to be clear, these are both twinned in one article that we're going to be asked to vote on, correct, Alex?
Yes, they are. However, we can, you could either note this in your report, how the select board how the finance committee feels, or what your preference is. As I did note, the select board did vote to move the entire authorization forward. However, we might only move forward with phase 2 right now, and then put off phase 1 for a couple of years.
So what's the sense of the committee? Kristen, please?
Just another comment about the other phase. Again, having in earlier years spent a lot of time at the transfer station, and I don't know, aside from Joanne, if anybody else on the committee here goes there every week, but there is a safety issue. There have been accidents there. There have been issues. And we've been talking about reorganizing or redesigning the recycling area for many years, 2 employees ago at least, back when Jeff Bremser was here. So I think that it is something that needs to be looked at. I can't speak to the cost of that phase, but I think that, we do need to improve the efficiency here and working conditions. And the safety issue is you've got people coming in there of, anyway, I think safety is an issue as well. So, thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Andy?
I'm not there that often, but I'm sure there for quite a few years. The one thing I've noted is both for the transfer building as well as the recycling area, there's too much cross-traffic between cars and pedestrians. And the tendency is to want to back your car up into the spot because it's all perpendicular parking. The redesign looks like it's just drive-through without a need to cross pedestrian ways. I mean, I think it's significantly safer. I too hesitate at the idea that we might spend that now. But certainly the phase 2 in the garage and staff building, I think I agree that it's a priority.
Thank you. Joanne, please?
Mr. Chairman, from my point of view, I would recommend that we, if anything, go ahead with the OSHA requirements, which is the new garage and staff building. But something was brought up that's interesting. Do we have a record of accidents? Do we have backup to support why we need the rest of phase 1 and phase 3? Just a couple of questions. I think a little more backup might help. But since we're under the gun for OSHA, it would be my desire to take phase 2 out and concentrate on that and get that done for the employees, for our town employees, and for safety reasons, and come back for the other 2 phases some other time.
Andy, please. Thank you, Joanne.
I'll have to say that in the article, it's unclear whether the OSHA compliance issues are strictly with phase 2 or also may be included in phase 1. Do you know, Alex?
I do not know off the top of my head. I'll have to look at that. But I think there are some issues in both phases, but I think phase 2 is the priority.
Yeah, I would agree with phase 2, absolutely. I could see that. Well, I mean, I don't have any problem, recommending phase 2 and not recommending phase 1.
What do others feel about that? In our report, obviously, we're going to have to take a vote on what's before us here, which is 1 and 2. But we do have the ability, as Alex noted, in our report to the warrant, to call out a strong preference that the town focus on phase 2 first.
And the article can be amended at town meeting.
True. So what do people think about that? Norma, you've got your hand up.
Well, it may be prudent
Pressure button.
to separate this. Are we going to be able to separate them? I think phase 2 is important. I think phase 1 and phase 3 could be postponed forever, but at least a while. So is it possible that we can vote on just one phase at a time?
I don't think it's possible for us today because we've been presented with a warrant article that embeds both of phase 2 and 3. But we can take a vote on that, and then we're discussing the prospect of calling out in our report a strong preference of the committee to pursue phase two, if that's where we are. And as Andy noted, somebody at town meeting from the floor can make a proposal to amend this article to only focus on phase two. Joanne, please.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I keep harping on this. It just doesn't sound reasonable for us to vote for the whole 1, 2, and 3 without us being the one. If the majority of us feel that phase 2 is the proper way to go, and for the taxpayers and for our town employees, why can't we be the ones to recommend that and not just wait for someone from at town meeting and hope that someone makes a change?
Well, that's what I'm trying to understand. Is it the sense of the committee that we would like to do that? So that's phase 2 from my perspective. That's part B. Part A is we have a warrant article here that has been
Right.
presented to us by the board that we need to vote on. Now, if everybody feels strongly enough that they don't support phase 1 and 2, vote against it.
Okay?
But we have to do that first. We can also, as I've said, in our report, if it's the sense of the committee that we feel very strongly about this, we can call out in our report that we think it's a mistake or otherwise, it shouldn't be a priority, however we want to characterize it. We can wordsmith it later. But if that's the sense of this committee, I'd like to understand that. So when comes time to draft this section, it can be drafted appropriately.
Well, my sense would be to separate the phases, and my personal vote would be to go forward with phase 2 this year.
Okay. Kristen, you've got your hand up, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm in support of both Phase 1 and Phase 2 because as I mentioned before, we've been looking at redesign of the recycling area and the drop-off area for a long time. And not only, I think the safety issue, I don't care how many incidents there've been, we don't want one to happen. And if you go there on a regular basis, as Andy points out, backing up and pedestrians crossing back and forth to recycling bins doesn't make any sense. Other transfer stations around the Cape, like in Dennis, you pull up parallel park and you drop your stuff off, and there is no backing up. Your car is always pointed in the same direction. Nobody's crossing in front of you. That's what we need for safety and for efficiency. The cost of our waste disposal, I don't know the numbers, but I know that they're a whole lot more than they've used to be. We're not getting the money that we used to get from recycling for a multitude of reasons. So our biggest effort, or one of the tools that we have, is to divert our waste, our solid waste. And I like one of the important aspects of the transfer station, for those who don't go there on a regular basis, is the swap shop or the gift shop. And I see that we've got that in a better location where we had, again, had been discussed many years ago. This would be an appropriate location so that we can help divert a lot of waste, solid waste, from just being tossed in the bins or, thrown into the blue building, which costs us money. So I think that, it's not just, I think safety is always an incredibly important reason to take on a project, and efficiency and helping to reduce our costs. Ultimately, if we can be more efficient and have better signage and facilitate the diversion of our solid waste is a great way to reduce our tipping costs. Thanks.
That's helpful, Kristen. Thank you. Alex, do you want to?
I just found the slide that says that the majority of the ADA and OSHA upgrades would be addressed as part of phases 1 and 2. So just for the committee's
That's helpful
information.
background. Tommy, please.
Thank you. I agree with Kristen wholeheartedly, and I just think that if you put something off to next year, it's going to be more expensive. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex, can you just perhaps give us a quick overview of how you would anticipate the interplay of the financing structures between this prospective project and the iron and manganese PFAS treatment facility? We're looking at, in aggregate for these two, $24.6 million. Would you anticipate bonding them jointly in '26, or how would you sort of see the capital stack here?
Well, again, it depends on how much is completed for each of them. As noted, the water treatment plant comes from water debt, so again, that would not impact the taxpayer. However, because
Other than having to pay for it.
other than having to pay for it, well, the water rates, so the water rates would pay for it. But we do foresee that there's enough water revenues not to have to increase those water rates, so we could absorb that within the water budget as it is right now. Depending on what other operating costs might go up, that would be independent of that. So looking at that, again, when we go out to bond, we do try to issue, bundle as many things as we can because it does cost us money when we have to go out to bond. We need to get a rating call, we have a bond counsel, our financial advisors, so all those packets do cost money. So if we can bundle a lot of projects into one issuance, we will do that. I see the transfer station that we would complete phase 2 first, and probably bond for that at that time, and then move on to phase 1, unless it makes more sense to get it all done at once for cost efficiencies if we have somebody there doing it. So again, we'd have to look at the bids, going out to bid, whether we say, okay, we're going to bid phase 1 and phase 2 as an alternate, or phase 2 and phase 1 as an alternate, is something that we probably would look at, because it might be more favorable if you mobilize people to have it there. But again, the disruption to the transfer station is another issue. We need to look at keeping it open during construction, so probably that's why it is phased in, so you can have the operational while you're building one section and then the other. I'm not sure how that works. I was just looking at the presentation, so.
No, that makes sense. Okay, thank you. Norma, please.
Pardon me, I probably should know this, but would you tell me what OSHA stands for?
Occupational
Operation-
Health and Safety Administration.
Yes.
Yes.
Hello, I didn't hear that.
Occupational Health and Safety Administration,
Thank you.
the branch of the federal government.
The federal.
Okay, so we were talking, and we're sort of leaking into our report to the warrant, but we've had a couple of expressions of interest of whether we recommend to separate this into kind of two projects. We recommend keeping them together. Any other views on that? Andy?
Yeah, for clarity's sake, I think we first need to deal with the article as drafted.
Yeah, that's fine. I appreciate that.
And I'll move it as drafted.
Okay, is there a second then?
Second.
Okay, any further questions, comments?
Oh, here I go again,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman. We talk about, yes, I'm going to vote in favor of this, and hopefully the administration and the selectmen, with our encouragement, will come up with a plan so that it makes it as easy on the taxpayer as possible and doable. But when we're talking about, the sewer rates and the water rates take care of this, we don't have to worry about going on the tax rate. But these are all costs of living in this town. Water rates, sewer rates, hotel motel tax, food tax, and the taxes, the regular real estate tax. So it's not that we're not having to pay for it, because we are, whether it's water, sewer, or taxes. So, yeah, I've done a lot of talking on this. I will vote for it with hope that we come up with something reasonable for the taxpayer, as far as not getting into something that we bite off all at once, and then it takes year after year after year after year that we're hung up on it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Otherwise, I'll start the vote. Norma, please.
We are now voting on the entire article as it's printed here.
That's correct. Phase 1 and Phase 2, total cost of approximately $4.8 million.
And not phase 3, would not include.
There's no, Phase 3 is not being recommended in this article because there's no figures yet associated with it. So, Norma, in favor?
No.
Oh, you have to move the article?
We had a motion and a second.
Okay.
So, Norma is not in favor. Kristen?
Yes.
Tommy?
Yes.
Barb?
In favor.
John?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
And the chair's in favor. 7-1. All right, thank you, Alex. Belt Filter Press.
And then, if you would, Mr. Chairman, I mean, can we at least have an expression of whether or not we think
By all means,
recommending phase 2 first, be separately.
so I have the sense from Joanne, Kristen, and Tommy so far on whether we want to keep these jointly or we want to recommend phasing them in.
Well, if nothing else for our report, we
Correct.
may want to say that.
Right, so what's this, again, what's the sense of the committee? All right, Joanne, I've got you reported as saying you want to keep it separate.
Yes,
Kristen and Tommy want to, can have it considered jointly.
Yes.
Others? Andy, you got a view on this?
I'm torn, but I guess I'd still say jointly, keep it together.
Barbara, I see you got your hand up.
Yes, I'm in favor of keeping it together jointly too. I guess I'm a slow learner, but every time I go into that dump, I think it's hard for me. You know, I start out going to the commercial side, so I think it's important that we do both things. I do think we should do phase 2 first, but I am in favor of considering the whole thing together.
Okay. So I'm happy to take other expressions of personal interest, but so far we're pretty split. It's actually leaning in favor of keeping these together.
Fair enough, that was just my purpose.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Please, Joanne.
one more shot. When we get to town meeting, the people in town meeting, there are going to be a lot of people in town meeting who use the dump regularly. I don't know about this committee. I'm there all the time. I'm not afraid to go in and out of there. And I think, well, that's enough.
Okay. We used to shoot seagulls there when we were kids with our BB guns. But it was different.
It's not a bad place.
Used to be easy, you'd pull up to the open face of the landfill.
Exactly. It was not
You had to
challenging.
drive aggressively enough to scare away the seagulls, and then you just throw everything out and drive away,
Right.
you know?
Okay. From seagulls to belt filter presses. Alex, over to you.
Okay, yes, the next one is the belt filter press. I think you've seen this in the capital plan for the past several years. When it first came up at 4-point-something million, it's now up to 5.8 million. And I'm going to share my screen just because this might give you an idea of what a belt filter press is. And okay, so the belt filter press is located at the wastewater treatment plant or the water pollution control facility, and it's actually in the dewatering building. So, just make this a little bit bigger. Okay. So the history of this is in 2009, the implementation of the wastewater treatment included a phased approach. So, just reading this down, and we had one of 2 belt filter presses. So one was included to replace one of the 2 that failed back in 2009. So in 2003, we're looking to replace the 30-year-old belt filter press and then have one which would, be a backup in case one failed. What the belt filter press does is it presses all the liquid out of the sludge, and then so that makes it easier to handle and get rid of. So this is what the belt filter press looks like. It's quite a large piece of equipment. And then, so you have liquid sludge that goes into the belt filter press, and when it comes out, it is a dried cake. So much easier to get rid of and less costly to get rid of. And I think that's,
Pretty straightforward.
yeah.
It's essentially dewatering the sludge that comes out of the end of the processing facility and process. Questions for Alex? Kristen, please.
Alex, do you have any idea what the life of one of these is?
Well, I think the current one is about 30 years old, so it is a long life. However, if the current, we did have 2 at one time. The new one, if it's is approved at town meeting, would replace the old one. The old one would sort of be as a backup in case something happens and it fails. If it does fail, then I don't know what the lead time is to get a replacement, but however, it's a costly replacement, and again, it reduces the cost of getting rid of the sludge because there's no water in it or no liquid in it. Also, this has been approved on the, for state revolving funds at a 0% interest loan for up to $5 million of the cost, and that is on the intended use program for 2023. So if we approve it, and we have to have the local approval to stay on, or else we'll have to go through that process of reapplying for those Clean Water Trust 0% interest loans again.
Okay, Norma, please.
Two questions. When that process is completed, where does that cake go?
We
And
truck
number
it-
two,
Yeah,
is that a requirement, or how did we get into that?
I'm not sure. I know that we do truck the sludge off. I'm not sure where it goes. I'd have to ask the DPW or our contractors where we take it to. But
Well,
we
what
do-
I'm concerned with, when we get to that cake, do we have still another cost involved in getting rid of it?
Yes.
Or is that all involved in the first thing?
No, there is a cost to dispose of the dried cake, and that is the sludge removal, which we appropriate money in the sewer budget every single year.
Mr. Chair,
All right, Norma, was there a second question?
oh, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Joanne, please.
Yes, those are transferred to a sludge dump. I know about them very well because back in the 70s, 80s, the state tried to put a sludge dump at the maximum security prison in Walpole. It took us $1 million of donated money and the best environmental lawyers you could get, and about 5 to 10 years to make them back off. So I think there's a place on the South Shore. There are places that do accept this sludge, and it's a natural thing. It happens all the time, and you have to transport it, but you're very glad to be rid of it.
Well, I spent a number of years of my career financing infrastructure and large-scale infrastructure in Europe, including wastewater treatment facilities across Europe. And over there, at least, some of these facilities transferred their cake to cogeneration facilities where they're incinerated and helped used to generate electricity. I don't know if they do that here. I know they did it routinely in Europe. Further questions? Barbara? Barb beat the buzzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am for this. I think it's necessary, of course, but I'm wondering, it saves us a lot of money. Do you know how much, Alex? I mean, does it save us $500,000 a year?
I do not know how much it would save us because, again, we've been shipping or transporting out dewatered sludge right now. So, again, if it's based on the weight of the sludge, I think it would be probably double. I'm not sure.
I wouldn't be surprised to find facilities not accepting liquid sludge.
Yeah.
Frankly, I don't know, again, for the U.S., but I'd be surprised to learn that facilities were taking that.
And plus, I think also if it was not dewatered, then we would have to be transporting it more often because it would, just the sheer volume of it to get rid of it. When you dewater it, it's less bulky.
Okay, further questions? If not, I'll take a motion. Joanne, please.
I think I'm anticipating Mrs.
Yes,
Bird's
you are.
question. So 5.8% borrowing for 20 years at 2% would be an impact of 4 cents on the tax rate based on the current valuations, and that would be an increase of $38.01 the first year, declining over 20 years to 3 cents on the tax rate or $29.90 in the final year of borrowing.
So that makes, so far, a $92 per year hit with.
And that's if everything
If it's
was
all
borrowed
approved.
all at one time and hit all at the same time. So again, when we look to borrow, we're very aware of the impact on the taxpayer, and we always look to try and keep our debt service as level as possible without too many spikes in one year. So again, we'll look at that moving forward if all these articles capital borrowing articles are approved at town meeting.
And Mr. Chair, I'd like, if we could put that in our report to,
Sure.
to add it all up for the taxpayer, that if these articles are approved, this is what is added to the tax bill.
We can certainly do that, thank you. Norma, please.
I'm interested in what you said, Mr. Chairman, about the reusing of that cake when it was done in Europe. Is that something that was investigated here? I mean, we recycle so many things and repurpose them. I would be curious to know whether or not this type of cake or sludge or whatever you want to call it can be repurposed and save the town money using it somewhere else in the town.
Again, I can only speak to my experience in Europe with these facilities. I can't to the United States, I can assume, but that would not be fruitful. Alex, unless you've got some information, I think we'd have to defer the question to Dr. Bob
Yeah, I do
or
not,
somebody
but-
West End Sampson to answer that.
yeah, I can see if I can find out an answer. I do not have an answer on that one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Norma. Further questions? All right, if not, I'll take a motion to support the spending of $5.8 million on the new belt filter press.
So moved.
Second,
Very good, thank you, Norma.
Yes.
Kristen?
yes.
Tommy?
Yes.
Barb?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Chairs in favor, 8-0. All right, that was a quick $30,410,000. So, Alex, my understanding is we're not going to move forward with the salt storage shed?
That's correct. The Select Board decided to defer that for another year, just based on all of these articles, as well as the Eldridge Public Library.
All right, so let's go to that. Eldridge Public Library, $2 million for an HVAC system.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. The Eldridge Public Library heating and ventilation HVAC system has basically failed. So we've had, this past year, a number of repairs coming in, and quite costly repairs to keep the system up and running. Based on a similar project at a library off Cape, the estimated cost to replace the system is $2 million. We'd originally thought that it was going to be more in the line of $1 million, but again, this was based on a similar project, as I said, off Cape. So the article is looking to appropriate $2 million, $1 million from free cash, and $1 million to the tax levy for this project. And using that, we have a balance left in free cash of about, actually now it's down to about $233,000 to carry over to FY 2024. And the impact on the tax levy, again, 1 cent on the tax levy is about $100,000. So that would be an estimated tax rate for FY 2024. Again, the other authorizations, we've estimated the impact on the tax rate for borrowing. However, that would not hit for FY 2024. That would hit sometime in the future. So currently, the tax rate is $3.88. This article for the library, if approved, would mean a tax rate of $3.98 based on our valuations. And again, that would be a one-time use of the excess levy capacity that we have right now, and no borrowing costs needed for this project.
Okay, questions on the Eldridge Public Library HVAC replacement project? Norma, please.
Well, I think libraries and churches are the heart of any town. And while we do not have a burgeoning population of children, we have some wonderful children's programs at the library. And I think anything you can do to encourage children to read and to enjoy books is never expensive.
Thank you, Andy.
Oops. There's also some wonderful adult programs at the library. And my only disappointment in this is that after the extensive rehabilitation and addition onto the library, what now seems just like yesterday, but I guess was 20-plus years ago, that the HVAC system needs to be replaced. But obviously, incredibly important to keep the interior of that building envelope functioning.
Yeah.
I've seen it when it's been flooded. It wasn't pretty.
Well, the importance of any collection being appropriately stored in a climate-controlled environment is critically important, the longevity of that collection, of course. Further questions? If not, I'll take a motion to support the $2 million spend at the Eldridge Public Library to redo the HVAC system.
Second.
Thank you, Joanne. Any further
Norma?
comments, questions? Okay. Norma, please. Yes. Kristen?
Yes.
Tommy?
Yes.
Barb?
Yes.
Oh, dog votes yes. John?
Yeah.
Dog can only vote once, Barbara. Joanne?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Chairman's in favor. 8-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Alex, I think that does it today for a quick $32.3 million, or is there something further?
No, that's it for today. I did send out, I think, proposed agendas. I did give you the scorecard as best as I have it in the packet. We've been updating that as we move forward. We're looking at the next, today's what? Today's,
So we've got a meeting tomorrow.
so we have a meeting tomorrow, and,
Joanne has the helm.
yeah, we're looking at some of the routine articles for tomorrow. We have an updated amount for the prior year bills. The Cape Cod Regional Technical High School will be here making a presentation.
Terrific.
The 5-year capital plan improvements, as well as some other opioid settlement funds. So I'll do that, and then I will get the agenda out for the 14th, as well as the 16th. On the 14th, I think the focus probably should be on the report of the Finance Committee
Well, and I think the COA project,
and the COA project.
that being a
is-
big one at $11.14 million.
That is scheduled for the 14th, yes. Terry Whalen will be here.
Great.
And just so the board is aware, the Select Board will be hearing the Council on Aging / Center for Active Living tonight at 5:30. So that's probably, and the consultants will be there to make their presentation. So I would encourage the Finance Committee to tune in at 5:30 to the Select Board's meeting tonight. And we will be also talking about some of the financial impacts as well. And then I just received notification this morning that the Council on Aging directors would like to have a joint meeting with the Finance Committee Monday at 9:30 in the morning. They've posted that, and it was the first I have heard of it. So I'm just bringing that to your attention right now.
Okay, so I've been in correspondence with Pat Burke, who's on the board of the Friends of the Center for Active Living. And I've invited her to attend on the 14th, because that's when we're going to spend a lot of time focusing on the Center for Active Living. I had not heard about this request. There's a strong likelihood, I'm waiting to hear, but there's a strong likelihood I may actually be here tomorrow, but have to be in Boston all day Monday. So I don't know how people feel about the prospect of trying to pull together a meeting. What, Monday morning, when are they thinking? This is the first I've heard of this, Alex.
Again, I said I got notification right before I came over here. So it says Monday, March 13th at 9:30 a.m. in the small meeting room, as well as remote participation.
Okay, why don't, rather than sort of caucus the whole group now, why don't I get an email out this afternoon to everybody and see what everyone's availability is, just to give them the opportunity to check the calendar. Again, I think it's increasingly likely I won't be able to be here because I'll be in Boston. But let me get everybody an email this afternoon, and unless you know for certain already, in which case we can talk about it afterward. But let's revert on Monday at 9:30 a.m. For the time being, if we could, please.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Joanne, please.
tomorrow's meeting, I've lost my agenda. What are we, you're not going to be here, right?
No, there's an increasing likelihood that I will be here. Tomorrow is going to be Cape Cod Regional Technical High School, prior year bills, a lot of cats and dogs, CPA fund appropriations, which is the standard 3-bucket appropriations, if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken, Alex.
Correct.
And then the opioid settlement funds, with $70-odd thousand we're receiving from the county is our initial share, at least, of the opioid settlement fund. So it's a relatively light agenda.
Okay. You mentioned something about, you sent us some information on free cash,
Correct?
and it made me think, why, when, I still didn't like the idea of appropriating the $100,000 for inflation. It made me wonder, why haven't we been advised to use the Finance Committee's reserve fund for something like that? Alex?
That is, well, this is for future. Right now, we'll probably will be asking the Finance Committee to use their reserve fund for our damages to the frozen pipes, both at the DPW as well as at the fish pier. So I probably will be asking for that sometime soon, once we get through the warrant closing. But again, you know, it's really for extraordinary and unforeseen. Yes, inflation, you could say, is unforeseen, but I think that's kind of a stretch. I'd rather use it for emergency situations such as, you know, the damage over at the DPW building with the frozen pipe.
And can you tell us where the reserve fund for the Finance Committee comes from?
It is appropriated every year, so the taxpayers pay for it.
Okay. Thank you.
Two observations, and I'm wondering if I'm the only one who thinks it's ironic that the Department of Public Works has broken water pipes. I don't know if there's any way to preclude that going forward. It's kind of like broken water pipes at the water department at 127 Old Harbor Road. The second is, Alex, in calculating the impact on kind of the average household at $1 million, I wonder if, speaking of inflation and kind of housing cost spiral of the last several years, if going forward we don't change that number from $1 million, if the average transfer now in Chatham is, what, 1.1, 1.15, if we don't inflate that number a little bit just to get a little bit more currency with what's going on in the current housing market, but just a thought.
I think what we can do, and especially for the warrant, is sometimes we'll say this is the impact at 500,000, 800,000, a million, and we can do 1.2. Again, so you have, a million is a nice, you know, sort of round number. So
Totally
if you
get
know if you know your house is valued at 2 million, you just sort of double that. But again, we can, you know, have a variety.
Just a thought.
Yeah, just for informational purposes.
Okay, so let's turn briefly to our report to the warrant, which again is sort of in train. I've received a lot of very helpful feedback from folks. Things that clearly leap out is water, broadly construed, abundant and safe drinking water, the whole PFAS issue. But a number of these inputs have also extended to kind of coastal waters and pond runoff and the like, degradation of the natural environment. So my inclination is that it's not universal, but there's a pretty strong emphasis that I've been getting in the input in terms of water, and having us focus on that as a real significant topic that we want to address and point out to the select board. Is that fair to say? And to shout out to the taxpayer in our report.
In all its phases, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, and that's kind of what
Coastal,
I'm.
water, sewer,
Yep.
drinking.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, you know, I think one of the things that's important for people to always be aware of is that our water is our most important issue. It's ignored, and everything else is thought to be very important, and it probably is. But if you don't have clean water, you are in big doo-doo trouble. And I think people need to be reminded that water articles are very, very important.
Well, thank you, I appreciate that. And as we have said in the past, on more than one occasion, it's the egg upon which our goose sits. So, housing clearly has kind of sprung to the top of the list as well in the comments I've received. Not only the impact of kind of the affordability and ability of this kind of community to retain its sense of place, but knock-on effects, especially businesses being able to afford employees. And where do they live, and what do they have to pay them in order to continue, and the impact, adverse impact that's had on apparently many of our local businesses. So that's a topic that I think has made the list, unless anybody disagrees. It's been pretty unanimous in respect of that. Free cash is something that we have spoken about. Alex and Jill and I had a conversation about it probably 10 days ago or so about, because we've been asked by the Board of Selectmen as to whether or not we had a view on raising the target percentage of the operating budget that free cash represents in our fiscal policies. It doesn't seem, in my conversation with Jill and Alex, that there's kind of a policy reason behind that, other than to try to enhance compliance with the 3 to 5% of the operating budget. We have been dramatically in excess of that for the last 5 years, and significantly in excess of it for 5 years before that. We're waiting to see on a potential change to the language that might kind of acknowledge that free cash is an inexact science, that we understand that it can be over the policy range from time to time, but that, you know, the town will do its reasonable best efforts to hit that number. So I didn't know if you wanted to, again, several people in the call out to me have mentioned free cash. I wanted to check and see if people generally want to put that on the list.
Yeah. Yes, from my point of view.
See some nodding heads. See
And-
a lot of nodding heads. Okay.
And, Mr. Chairman,
Sorry. Alex is not nodding her head.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please.
And when we're talking about free cash, are we always talking about the inclusion that of the Harwich inflow for their use of our sewer system?
Well,
Is that always included in?
well, not always. It'll be until it's otherwise handled. And of course, we have an article that's going to be coming before us about allocating that into a separate fund. But yeah, until it's Andy, talking to Andy yesterday, it's kind of like a snake eating a pig, right? I mean, that pig is going to remain the snake until something happens to the pig. So in this case, it's going to be, well, right? I mean, it's going to be a big bulge inside the snake. And so until we get that $2.35 million from the IMA allocated elsewhere, it's going to remain in that free cash figure.
And
One of the reasons it's been as elevated as it has been over the last couple of years. Alex, please.
And also to note that the town did receive $3.6 million from Harwich this fiscal year, that if it's not segregated into the separate fund, we will have $5 million in Harwich IMA funds as part of free cash.
That's like two pigs in the snake. Norma, please.
I think the whole term free cash is something that could be explained to people on the floor of town meeting. I had just wondered, when people hear the term free cash, do they think it's just something we're going to take out of thither and yon and do something with it? So I think that term is confusing to many people, and I think it might be worth explaining.
Well, we've tried to do that in our historic reports, and can certainly reemphasize that. Again, absolutely so. Absolutely so. We've got the Center for Active Living saga I wrote, which may or may not be resolved at this town meeting. We're obviously going to be getting a presentation on that, but I think it would be worthwhile noting the continued conversation around that. We've got numbers now as of a couple of days ago for the prospective build costs, $11.14 million, I believe. So that was one thing that I was thinking on the list. And the unknown unknowns, as we referred to it last year, and Kristen made a reference to something similar. The things we don't know might come and get us, like a $19.8 million water treatment facility that 18 months ago we didn't see coming. And if PFAS pops up its head at another well, we're going to be facing that issue again. So that was a topic that I thought might merit some inclusion and discussion, if you guys agree.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, Barbara made a point in her observations to me about the promotion of the two chiefs, fire chief and police chief, from within, and how laudable that really that is, and how terrific that is for morale and for kind of the cultural continuation of what's important within these departments. And I thought it'd be worth calling that out as well, if you guys agree.
Excellent, yes, good idea.
Okay, terrific.
Terrific idea.
Anything else that we should be thinking about that we want to try to highlight? Okay,
Well,
I'll continue to think about it. I'm sorry, go ahead. Jen.
again, I suppose we're going to do this say, give the tax rate and the increases if everything is approved?
Yeah, yep, I've got that.
So they
The
have,
total impact of tax rate on of all the proposed CapEx.
okay. Yes, I
Yep.
think that's important, yeah.
Okay, well, we're sort of early stream. I've got 3 pages. It usually lands at about 10 or 12. Some of which is, as Alex well knows, is charts and graphs and stuff that she's gonna have to help us out with. But if there's other things that come up, we can talk about it tomorrow. We can talk about it next week.
Yeah.
But if you have a brainstorm and wanna just send me an email, please do. Just give us a chance to get ahead of it a little bit.
We're always proud of the end product, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
No, it's worth what you paid for it, Joanne, so. Okay, anything further from anyone? Norma, please.
I won't be here tomorrow, Eric has. That's right, just for him. Eric has a hospital appointment.
Understood. I appreciate that. Thank you and good luck. Okay, anything further from anyone? Alex, anything from your chair?
Nope, that's it. We will see you tomorrow at 1:30, and I will get the joint meeting posted just to be on the safe
Yeah,
side
that'd be
with
great.
the
And then we'll
Council on Aging.
get some feedback from the committee and report back to you. Again, I'll know this afternoon, and then it's probably the same email. I'll know this afternoon if I have to go to Boston this afternoon, as we've been anticipating. It looks like it's probably Monday now. So more to come on that. And otherwise, I will take a motion for us to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Kristen?
Aye.
Andy?
Aye.
Norma?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes.
Tommy?
Yes.
Barb, are you still with us? Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'm still here.
John?
Aye.
Terrific. Chair says aye. Off we go. Thank you guys very much. Appreciate your flexibility on the scheduling.